You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristodoulou.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristodoulou, and today on this July 11th, 2022, I am going over 5 teams that I feel are most likely to find themselves in the 2022 NFL playoffs after missing out just last season. So make sure you comment down below. Let me know some teams that you think might find their way into the playoffs this year that maybe haven't been in even just last season or maybe the last couple of years. And then also make sure, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're working our way to 500 subs where we will be doing a t-shirt giveaway for the show shirt that you see me wearing here now. And without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So 5 different teams that I have listed for you guys today. We'll start with the first one here, and I actually have a couple of them coming out of the AFC West, and the first one here has got to be the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, literally just a quarter of play away and a defensive meltdown really away from finding themselves into the playoffs here after losing the final game of the season to the Las Vegas Raiders. I mean, you have to look at this team and think based off of what they've done during the just offseason alone and having another year under the system of head coach Brandon Staley, and you look at quarterback Justin Herbert and how good he is, and the entire offensive unit is pretty much back, and they've improved on the offensive line through the draft. I just have no real reason to believe that this team can't at least make a run and at worst find their way in as the number 7 seed. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and pick out who has to miss the playoffs for them to make it in, but if I was to bet my money on a team, the Chargers feel like a team that are probably going to find themselves in the playoffs starting this year and maybe for the next handful of years going forward. I know the AFC West is really loaded. There's a lot of really good teams coming out of there. You, of course, have yourself the Kansas City Chiefs. The Broncos now have Russell Wilson. Then, of course, we're talking the Chargers here. The Raiders made it to the playoffs last year as well. I mean, we're looking at an AFC where realistically, we could be seeing the entire AFC West finding their way into the playoffs if they're being competitive enough and beating some of the other top teams that are in the AFC, the remaining other 3 divisions there. And I really like the aggressiveness that the Chargers just show, their willingness to go for it on 4th downs. And again, quarterback situation, Austin Eckler, they have really good wide receivers. People sleep on Keenan Allen all day. And then like the additions of Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson on the defensive side of the football, and that's not to mention some of the draftees that they have coming in as well. This Chargers team feels poised and ready to finally start making some runs at a potential Super Bowl berth, and I like the Chargers' shot. Second team that I have listed on here, and this is in no specific order if you're watching through here and you think I'm like ranking these or anything, no specific order. I'm just kind of rattling them off the notes here that I have as I go through. I'm going to have to call on the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like, you know, when you talk about teams that have dealt with injuries, no team quite like the Ravens, and so early on. I think the Titans had the most injuries, and a big reason as to why Mike Vrabel was able to win Coach of the Year award was because he was able to drag that Titans team, a very injury-riddled Titans team, to the playoffs. But the Ravens really started under the gun with a ton of injuries. Their secondary was depleted very early on. They were running like a 4th-string running back week 1 of the season, it felt like. Lamar Jackson ended up going down, I think, for like 5 games altogether, was it last year? He barely played that 5th game or whatever it was that he missed. I mean, you just look at a team that is year in and year out so well coached. They draft so well. Kyle Hamilton going to Baltimore is probably my favorite pick in the entire draft. I cannot believe a top 5 prospect like him fell all the way down to the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm sure that they're probably still sitting there thinking, I cannot believe we have Kyle Hamilton in our secondary now. I mean, I just have no reason to really believe that this team can't take the spot of, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who snuck in and were able to play the Chiefs that first week of the wild card round. If I was to go and take a team right now that I thought would rebound and come back and be a potential fight, like a team that was in the fighting for the number 1 seed in the AFC prior to Lamar's injury, I would bet on the Baltimore Ravens here. I mean, Lamar Jackson, you say what you want about him. If you've been watching my show, you know I'm very high on him. I think he is arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league in terms of his decision-making, how just a playmaking ability that he brings to the table, and how much he changes his Baltimore Ravens offense. Harbaugh is one of the best coaches and most consistent coaches in the league. this team is going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and I would be very surprised if they are not in the running for even like the number 2 seed at worst. But this is a team that looked really strong early on. They got a massive win over the Chiefs last year early in the season. I believe it was week 2. And, again, injuries just kept mounting, and ultimately you're losing your starting quarterback, and good luck finding yourself in the playoffs without your starting quarterback at the end of the season there. Tough year for the Ravens, and I think they bounce back this year. A third team that I have listed here from the NFC, and we actually, funny enough, only have one NFC team on this list, and it's this team here, the New Orleans Saints. I cannot stress enough how much I like this team going into this year. Obviously, there is some concerns with the Alvin Kamara impending suspension and the legal issues he was dealing with at the Pro Bowl. We'll obviously have to see what happens with that and how that turns out, how long he ends up missing time. I think that is going to be a deciding factor in, just how effective this offense can be throughout the season. But Michael Thomas, one of the best wide receivers in the league, at least when he was playing a couple of years ago, is finally making a comeback after what feels like forever. The league it feels like a lot of people have forgotten about him, but he is making a comeback this year. Jameis Winston led this team to a 5-2 record and a shellacking of the Green Bay Packers in week 1 with how good the defense looked, who obviously still has Dennis Allen around. He got promoted from defensive coordinator to head coach after Sean Payton retired. I just think that this team right now, if they did not lose Jameis Winston, is a surefire playoff team. And I firmly stand behind the belief if Jameis Winston did not go down last year, the Saints probably end up taking the 49er spot in the playoffs. You say what you want about that, if, ands, or buts. This was a team that I was really high on up until Jameis Winston went down. And then, obviously from there, it kind of derails the team when you're starting Trevor Siemian and whoever else it was that they had starting at the quarterback spot there. And, it felt like people were talking about, Drew Brees come back and save the Saints this year. Obviously, he didn't. But this is a team where Dennis Allen, I firmly believe in him. I understand he's a first-year head coach, but I think he has coached what has been consistently one of the best defenses in the league for, I can't even tell you how many years now. Year in and year out, it feels like the Saints are one of the best defensive units. They've added some additions to the team as well. I really like what this team has going forward. As long as Jameis Winston is healthy, Alvin Kamara doesn't miss a ton of time for his suspension, if Michael Thomas can return to form, you also have Marquez Callaway, and incoming rookie class as well. Don't forget Chris Olave. There's so much to like about this team. I think they find themselves in the playoffs. Circling back to the AFC here, my fourth team that I have on this list, and a little bit of a homer team thing for me, but I do have a feeling that the Indianapolis Colts will finally make a solid run through the playoffs here. Acquiring Matt Ryan and Yannick Ngakoue this offseason is massive for the team. And again, all fandoms aside, with me just kind of breaking things down, the pass rush really needed some help here. And Yannick Ngakoue, coming off a 10-sack season, for whatever reason, he has been such a productive pass rusher. I'm not saying he's the best, but a guy who consistently brings pressure and gets to the quarterback and brings him down, for whatever reason, just kind of keeps getting passed around the league. I don't understand why. I'm happy to see him have fallen into the Indianapolis Colts lap here for our easy trade of him and Rock Ya-Sin. But Matt Ryan coming into the league, this was actually who I wanted the Colts to try to go after last season during the offseason instead of Carson Wentz if things had not worked out with Matthew Stafford, which obviously they did not. He ends up winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. Happy for him. Really wish that could have been the Colts he came to. But I like Matt Ryan as a quarterback. I still think he has some juice left in the tank, and I think that, he could stick around Indianapolis for the next 3 or 4 years and make them a legitimate playoff contender. Injuries to the O-line last year, Quentin Nelson missed some of his first games, him coming back and having a rest of the group. I'm excited to see what some of the rookies on this team, Alec Pierce especially, ends up doing. And then the defense, one of the best in the league. It's going to depend based on Darius Leonard's return and timetable. I know they had been saying that, he should be back for week 1. Do I think he's going to be back for week 1? I sure hope so, but, things happen. I have not really heard anything about his injury progress and his recovery progress. Hopefully it is on the more positive side of things that he gets back and he's ready to go for week 1. But I just think that with some of the key losses that I've seen the Titans sustain this offseason and the additions the Colts have made, I think they have a much better shot this year than they did last year of competing with the Titans and fighting for that number 1 spot in the division. And then for my last team, the Denver Broncos, we alluded to them a little bit earlier here. The addition of Russell Wilson is obviously massive for this team, but I also really like them bringing in Randy Gregory as well. Putting him alongside Bradley Chubb to fortify that pass rush and just improve upon a defense that last season was championship level. Denver Broncos, one of the best defenses in the league. It was one of the saddest things to watch, such a great defense, which honestly, if you look at the numbers and you look at the way they played last year, had they had a competent offense, would have probably been even better. When your offense is consistently going 3 and out and you cannot get anything going moving the football, and your defense is still shutting down some of the better teams in the league and getting things done, the possibilities are endless if you have a offense that can actually move the football and score. Russell Wilson brings stability at the most important position. It's obviously going to be a kind of do or die season for this skill position group. Tim Patrick got paid, I believe, last year or the year prior, a pretty solid deal. Everyone's very high on Jerry Jeudy and his route running ability. I think he is one of the shiftier wide receivers in the league, as long as he can mitigate his dropping issues that he's kind of dealt with here and there. And Cortland Sutton can be the number 1 wide receiver that I think the Denver Broncos believe he should be. This is a really good unit. Skill positions there, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon. Offensive line is solid. Defense, again, championship level, and you bring in a quarterback like Russell Wilson. This is a recipe for success. And like I said, there is a very strong possibility here that we're looking at 4 teams from the AFC West in the playoffs. I could firmly see something like that happen. I'm not saying that the rest of the AFC is weak and that the AFC West is where all the power resides, but you've seen the moves that the Chargers have made, that the Raiders have made, that the Chiefs have made, the Broncos, what they have done. There is a lot of firepower going on in the AFC West right now, and the gains are very significant on the western side of the AFC. I'm not saying that the other teams on the South, East, and North haven't done much. There obviously have been some moves here and there. The Bengals are obviously a team. They just made it to the Super Bowl here. I just mentioned the Baltimore Ravens. The Bills are doing their thing. People are feeling positive about what's going on with Miami and New York, which is bananas to say to me. But the Patriots, we'll have to see how they shake out. There's a lot of possibilities here, don't get me wrong. But I feel like if you're not winning your division, you are going to have a very hard time making it into the playoffs if you are not from the AFC West. There's just a ton of really good positive things to see coming out of that division. But those are 5 teams that I feel could potentially make a run for a playoff spot this year after missing out last season. I would love to know what you guys think. Who do you feel sneaks their way into the playoffs? I think a really cool dark horse pick that I've been seeing a lot of people talk about, and I really love Robert Saleh. It would be awesome to see the New York Jets make a massive turnaround and Zach Wilson really step up this next year with all the big additions they had this offseason with free agency and with the draft. I would love to see the Jets be like that dark horse team who slips in as a number 7 seed and surprises a lot of people, but we'll have to see how that happens. But that's like a dark horse pick that I would have. I'd love to hear if you guys have any other interesting predictions. But that's it for me. I appreciate you guys for joining in. As always, thank you all for watching. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.